The first thing that I really wanted to touch on was the fact that I finally did watch The Eternals. The Eternals was the first MCU movie, literally the first MCU movie that I did not see in the theaters. Even all the way back to 2008's Iron Man. And guys, if you want to go even further back, I saw the Blade movies in theaters, I saw the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movie in theaters, I saw the X-Men movies in theaters. I mean, we can go back further than that, but just the MCU, I've seen them all in theaters. This was the first one that I did not see in theaters because honestly, the trailers didn't do anything for me. The trailers I thought looked painfully boring and a little pretentious. The messaging that we were getting from Marvel Studios and Kevin Feige honestly sounded a little pretentious. Like, ooh, we've got this Academy Award winning Best Picture director or Best Director from the Academies, and this is the best movie we've ever made. I mean, honestly, from the get-go, I was like, this sounds a little pretentious to me. And quite frankly, I'm just not very familiar with the Eternals. Like, I never read any Eternal comics. I've got over 5,000 comics in here, and not one of them is an Eternals comic. So I just wasn't familiar with them, and the movie looked boring, and everything about it seemed a little pretentious. So I really wasn't interested in seeing it in the theaters. But when it came out on Disney Plus, I was like, why not? Why not give it a shot? So what did I think of it? Honestly, I didn't think much of it. It turns out that the trailers delivered a very real picture of what this movie is, and it was a very slow-paced, slogging, a little bit boring movie. It did have some nice action sequences, and to be fair, it might be the most beautifully shot MCU movie, but it felt so detached from the rest of the MCU that it was hard to, like, anytime that they brought up Iron Man or Thanos or anything like that, it almost took me out of the movie because it was like, oh yeah, this is a Marvel movie. And I don't know, the things that happen in this movie, I understand that the MCU is now this big cosmic world with sorcerers and aliens and all this, but everything that happened in this film, I just felt was a little bit much, even in the MCU. A little bit much, even in the MCU. It suffered from not having a good villain. It suffered from, again, it suffered from its pacing. Its pacing was awful. I mean, you've got these 10 characters, these 10 main characters that they had to spend time to introduce, and by the time that the movie really got going, it was over halfway into the film. And I don't know, I didn't care about any of the main characters, and I just didn't find it that interesting at all. Like I said, I was a little bored. The ending was fine. I mean, the ending was a big CGI fest, as MCU movies tend to be. But at the end of the day, I was just pretty bored by the entire film. It's hard not to talk about wokeism in Hollywood today. And, MCU, the first 3 phases of the MCU, I felt like they did a good job of having diversity in it without having to checkbox. And I also feel like the Eternals did a lot of box checking. They did a lot of box checking. Strong female lead, check. Very diverse cast, check. Pretty much every race is represented in this group. Very diverse cast, check. LGBTQ character, check. White male who ends up being antagonistic to everybody, check. I mean, it's everything about this seemed like checkism, woke checkism to me. And that didn't help its cause. But those things could have been there, and I would have enjoyed it had the movie been good. And it just wasn't. It just wasn't. I found myself very bored, and checking my watch, or, pausing it regularly to see how much was left, because I was very bored by it. I really hope that the Eternals do not play a very pivotal role moving forward in the MCU. I think that they also have the issue of being a little overpowered in the MCU. And yeah, the MCU is this world now where there's a superhero in every community, it seems like. Like, it's a very overcrowded MCU now, especially with the Eternals coming into the game. But even with this overcrowded MCU, the Eternals are definitely overpowered. And I don't know where we could take them that would be interesting moving forward from here. So I really think they're going to work best as a standalone. Maybe one or two characters can move on, but having them move on as a team, I'm honestly just not interested in it at all. This just didn't work for me. So that's just my take on it. What did you guys think of the Eternals? Let me know in the comments down below.